Afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to say welcome once again to Speak for Yourself podcast. Speak for yourself, where we encourage you to say what you mean and mean what you say. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, and at this time, I'd like to introduce my co-host.
Hello, I am Tammy Dozie A, and I am proud to be on this podcast with these gentlemen today.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Collins, and it is also a privilege to be with the Beauty and the Beast.
We just like to take this opportunity to say welcome you guys to this particular podcast and just let you know our whole intention of this particular podcast is to make sure that we are able to discuss upcoming as well as popular trending topics, those things that really are vital to what we're going through today. And we want to encourage you guys not only to join us in speaking for yourself, but saying what you mean and meaning what you say, because that's exactly what we're going to do. And today's topic is CRT, critical race theory. That's where we're going to start. And we'd like to start off by sharing this clip with you that we found out about. And then we going to talk about some stuff.
I think that white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate, right? The real sort of issue here, and I've heard people sort of say it, is one, I think that white people viscerally fear. It's not that white people don't know, right, what they have done. They know. They fear that there is no other way to be human but the way in which they are human, which is to, so, like you talk to white people and whenever you really want to have a reckoning about it, they say stuff like, it's just human nature. If y'all had all of this power, you would have done the same thing, right? And it's like, no, that's what white humans did. White human beings thought there's a world here and we own it. Prior to them, black and brown people have been sailing across oceans, interacting with each other for centuries without total subjugation, domination, and colonialism. We have seen what a show this iteration of treatment of other human beings means, and that my hope is that we would do it differently in the moments when we have some power. We will not do it perfectly, but I do think that all of us can sort of agree that a politics that says like there are superior and inferior human beings just isn't the way to go. And that's the thing that white people don't trust us to do because they are so corrupt. Their thinking is so morally and spiritually bankrupt about power that they can't they fear viscerally, existentially letting go of power because they cannot imagine that there's another way to be. It is either that you dominate or you are dominated. And isn't it sad that is spiritually who they are and that they can't imagine a sort of more expansive notion of the world? The thing I want to say to you is we got to take these motherfuckers out. But we can't say that, right? We can't say, I don't believe in a project of violence. I truly don't. Because I think in the end that our souls suffer from that. And I do think that some of this is a spiritual condition. So here is where I land most days about white people. And I actually have been helped in this by thinking about indigenous people, right? See, part of the challenge around whiteness is that it totally skews our view of everything, right? I gave this TED talk about this some years back. And one of the reasons I was trying to think about it is the world didn't start when white people arrived in America and tried to tell all the rest of us how things were going to go. There were people out here making worlds, Africans and indigenous people being brilliant and, libraries and inventions and, vibrant notions of humanity and cross-cultural exchange long before white people showed up being raggedy and violent and terrible and trying to take everything from everybody. And that's really important because if we believe that history starts for us when white people drag us to these shores, then we can never get outside of the notion that this is going to be our existential struggle. All things that begin end. White folks are not infinite and eternal, right? They ain't gonna go on for infinity and infinity. And that's super important to remember that white colonialism and imperialism has a beginning. And in my way of thinking about the world, that means it has an end. And so part of what we are trying to do is to imagine what are the steps that we must take to get to the other side of this very inconvenient epochal interruption of like Black and Indigenous world making. I mean, does that give people comfort on the day to day when you like just having to deal with white folks and the travesties that they create and the sense that they want to destroy the planet? Nah, there is a world beyond even our sojourn on the earth. And so whiteness is going to have an end date because it is not, despite what white people think of themselves, they do not defy the laws of eternity, right? Their projects are not so sophisticated that the natural laws of physics change for them. And when we sort of humble them humble our own understandings of whiteness, it seems like the biggest giant that we face. But in the end, right, it is what I like to say is, Black folks were out here for centuries and millennia doing all kinds of wonderful things and probably some fucked up things too. But whiteness is largely an inconvenient interruption. And so we then get to ask ourselves, so why am I here in this moment of it? Like, damn, why did I show up in this particular iteration? And it's like, well, I think we showed up in this iteration precisely so that we could help to figure out an end and a way to the other side of this, gargantuan historical tragedy that is white supremacy.
All right. Well, I had not heard of Miss Cooper until this particular clip, and I thank God for that woman. So I'm just saying that at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we like to get off our particular chest about this. But if I may, what I'd like to do is start with a definition that was given for CRT. There are some people familiar with it. Some people never heard of it, but critical race theory. This is the actual Wikipedia definition. Critical race theory, CRT, is a cross-disciplinary, intellectual, and social movement of civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race, society, and law in the United States and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. Now, I just like to start off by saying I think Ms. Cooper was dead on. And the first part that I did want to address before I turn it over to my co-hosts for their opinions is the fact that many people are calling to get her fired for this particular video. And I'd like to start off by saying it's Black people's fault if this lady is fired, because if you guys don't do what you need to do to stop folks from silencing people who say what they mean and mean what they say, then we're just as bad as all the rest of them. But the one thing that they were saying that she said that she was instigating a hate crime against all whites. That's a bunch of bull if I ever heard any in my life. And I share that simply because she said during this particular thing that she said that I cannot say that we should get rid of all these MFers. She said, oh, if I think that, I cannot say that. So that's the only thing that they heard that she said, oh, we should get rid of all them MFers. And that's not what she said. And what she said is true, especially as it pertains to the things that's going on and the fact that here it is that the powers to be simply don't want real Black history taught in our schools and our institutions. That's all I got to say about it right now.
You know what? I love what she said when she said that they were an inconvenient interruption, that everybody was going on living their lives. And for the most part, I had never really thought about it like that, because in your mind, you think that our history began with slavery because that's all we've ever been taught as well. We don't know how great we were previous to then. So I did enjoy that part of it. And then another thing I want to say about CRT is they are so in an uproar about people learning the truth about our history that this was never a course that was taught in school anyway. So they're trying to get rid of something that was taught in colleges, and they don't want the kids to know about their history. How crazy is that? So that's all I have for right now.
So that reason I was looking around, I took notes on the video and some other videos, but this is what I'll start off. I do believe this has been a very well calculated conspiracy I believe black folks jumped on the bandwagon and somebody said something and everybody rallied together. Oh, let's get them fired. Let's cancel them. It's like you have to be careful in the forefront because at the end, you really see what's going on. And what has happened while we jumped on the bandwagon at first, this has been a very calculated, let's take away our freedom of speech. Let's take away our constitutional rights to just have an opinion.
Right.
You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. It don't have to smell or look nice. It's your opinion. Everybody's entitled. But that is what has morphed into American culture. And it's been a good 10, 15 years that you can't say anything. You can't express anything. Otherwise, they want to cancel you. Perfect example. This young lady is a Ivy League educated professor.
That's right.
From Rutgers University. Rutgers is Ivy League, am I right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So I'm just gonna say, just give a presumption. She didn't just pull something out of thin air. She didn't pull it out her ass and
That's
just
right.
say, I'm gonna make this comment.
That's
There's
right.
some research behind this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Why can we make that presumption? Because anytime we hear somebody's name and it follows Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Rutgers,
Right.
we don't have to have proof. Concrete proof in front of us. We're going by the reputation of their education. So let's do the same for our sister here. Let's treat her like we treat all the rest of them.
Right.
So she didn't just say this just to be said. There is some proof, documented proof, to go along with this. And this takes me back to that whole issue with Nick Cannon when he gave an opinion, and then they were trying to say it was anti-Semitic. When I finally looked at the video, I said, this can't be what they're talking about. It can't be. And it was. There are certain groups, and my Caucasian family, and I say family because we're all God's children, but just like family, you always got that one that don't do right by everybody. But our Caucasian family love to play the victimization role. They do the wrong and then turn themselves into the victim when you call them out. And this is another example. This whole issue with critical race theory has to do with two components that Nick Cannon spoke about. First of all is apology and then atonement. Apology is you acknowledging what you have done through the years up until today, what you have done against us as a people. Atonement is when you say, this is what we've done and we want to make it right. Now, they started off early with atonement. You remember the whole 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
Which was an empty promise. However, if I go over to our Jewish family, I do believe they received reparations for being victims of the Holocaust.
That is correct. Along with the Japanese receiving reparations, along with the Chinese when they did them. So almost every other race on this planet. And the truth is where it is because America has mistreated many of different races and cultures. And as a fact, African Americans, those of African descendants, are the only one who have never received reparations. And it's something they don't even want to discuss. And back into where you're talking about in terms of apology and atonement, if you think about it, we are the only people that have not received an apology for what America has done to those of African descent. And so the truth is that starting there is something before you even get to atonement, because apology at least recognizes and acknowledges the mistakes that you've made. Now, atonement is trying to make what was wrong right. They have got nowhere near atonement because of their refusal to apologize. So as it pertains to those matters with Nick Cannon, I understand. And then we're talking about a Jewish community. But if we're talking about what CRT is supposed to be doing at this particular point, we have to keep in mind something that Ms. Cooper also said was, and it is a true thing that they have. She said that their belief is dominate or be dominated. That stems from the old thing, kill or be killed. And the truth is, she brought up a very valid point when we talk about the simple fact that why is it that they assume we can't all get along? Because as she mentioned, for years prior to the stuff that's been going on in America, people were on the seas trading with each other, getting along, doing well. And when they so-called discovered America, and we all know you can't discover nothing that already has inhabitants there doing stuff in the first place. So then you have to keep in mind where this mindset came from, and unfortunately that it still exists today. But I do have to say that I'm very, very cautious about the simple fact that we have allowed this to go on for so long without us standing up to do some things. I mean, for it to be 2022 and they're passing laws to try to prevent this from being done. This is the same thing that they used to do when they burned books. When we were not allowed to learn how to read for these same reasons, because we all know the Bible is very clear about knowledge being power. And so the truth is, if you don't have the knowledge, and how can you possibly get it if you're not able to read? And so they could say and tell you anything that they want to do. And this is what happened. And even after slavery, another form, sharecrop, because it was the same thing. They couldn't read, didn't know. So they're saying, oh, well, you owe us this much. Well, you did this much work, but yeah, you're still 10 years in my debt. And so they never could get out of what was supposed to be a fair thing for people being able to work the land that they live on. So eventually they can own it. And unfortunately, when you talk about the real systematic racism, this stuff is still done. It's done by redlining in districts of real estate, not allowing Black folks to be able to purchase. They actually had laws that said, when you sell this home, you cannot sell to an African American. How can you ignore the fact that this exists and not understand that this is built in to the American system? So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with, along with the things that you were talking about, Jay.
Yeah, and you were mentioning, about the redlining. So just recently, I saw on a TikTok video where there was actually a couple that was moving into a neighborhood, and it was still in place that Black people could not move in that neighborhood. So they said they were going to go ahead and change the laws
in 2022.
In 2022.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that?
What was the comedian that was on the radio? I can't think of his name right now. He had a big lawsuit because he was trying to purchase this mini mansion over in Bridgeport. And it was years, and he finally let it go. They ended up settling the suit, but they wouldn't sell him the house basically because he was Black over in Bridgeport.
Wow. And also another thing that I wanted to bring up, and we were talking about, prior to, we even had our own stuff within the last, how many years? I'm not sure of how many years. Well, we had Rosewood. Well, we had Tulsa. And we tried to say, well, listen, you won't give us anything, so we're going to do for self. And we're going to have everything for ourselves. So what I want to say is, they don't want other people to know what they've done, or is it guilt?
What is it? It's got to be a little both, because
no, it ain't no guilt.
You don't think so?
It ain't no.
You don't think they want their grandkids to see their pictures on? Their pictures up there lynching people, great grandma and great granddad.
See their pictures with here. Baskets around the tree.
Regardless as to what Kanye said, they didn't bring us here as immigrants. They brought us here for free labor.
Yes.
And ever since they ended slavery, they have been trying to figure out a way to keep the free labor. I don't feel like it's guilt, but you can't apologize and make atonement for what you're trying to wipe off the books altogether.
And continue to hide and deny. And one of the things that when you were bringing out, when they were talking about this stuff, it comes up when they talk about Black folks playing the quote unquote race card. Now, the truth is the card wouldn't possibly exist if these things weren't factual, if these things did not happen. So when you talk about playing a race card, and for those fools out there to say stuff like, it was a long time ago, get over it.
I know.
It's in the past. Let the past be the past. Now, for you ignorant people who actually think like that, let me simply suggest to you that if in fact because of the wealth of this country was built on the backs of slavery, of labor from our ancestors and stuff. Then if that's the case, all you have to do is give up all that was you took or was given to you as a result of slavery. And then, of course, we can leave the past in the past, because that's where your ass will be too. So this is why it's very important for you to understand. It's easy for you to say that while you're living still to this particular day off the wealth that was stolen from our ancestors. And I think Miss Tammy made a phenomenal point when we're talking about the fact that, you look at all this stuff, but the truth is this stuff didn't just happen. And so all those things that happened, and even when we were in a position, because right or wrong, we were forced many times to have our own businesses, to start our own businesses, the schools and the things that we're doing. So the things that she was speaking about, like Black Wall Street and so many other places, those things that even when we were doing those things for sales, those things were destroyed by angry white folks who were afraid that, oh, now they're taking money out of my pocket because they're doing for self. Yeah. And those other fools who say things like, well, like other people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you don't have no damn boots, how you gonna pull yourself up from anything? So that's the thing. If you had a level playing field, if things were equal, we wouldn't be having these conversations today. And because it's systemic racism, it's built into a system. Everybody, even they acknowledge the fact that we know about the discrepancies. We know more Black folks get locked up for the same crimes that white folks are given probation for. So they acknowledge and know these things, but yet it consistently goes on. And I don't want to leave out the fact that I know there are some Caucasian, there are some white folks who have done things, those involved in what they call the innocent projects, and some other folks who have been around, even as we did our studies with Fred, when we were doing the autobiography or our production on the life and time of Frederick Douglass, John Brown, who happened to be a Caucasian and stuff like that. But I'm saying, so we're not saying that all of these folks are necessary to blame or are have not trying to do some things, but I promise you, all of them have benefited just by the simple fact that you have less melatonin in your skin. Because I promise you, between a Black person being pulled over and a white person being pulled over, it's different situations based upon the color of your skin.
Very much so. But at least you can't be lynched now. It's against the law in 2022. They did pass that law.
Right.
So you can't be walking down the street and get grabbed. And
oh, that's some bull cracker-knackle, right? just like all the civil rights laws that's been passed years ago, and they've been violated. There's a song, and I can't remember the names. It's called "That's Just the Way It Is." Bruce Hornsby is who I think it is, but it talks about these particular things, and it says that the laws don't change in some people's mind because all they can see is the line on the coloring line, and that's the shade of how dark you are. And it's very true. You can make all the laws you want, but if you're in a position and your mindset is that you're superior based upon the color of your skin, it don't matter what that law says. You're still going to do those things to discriminate against people. It's still being done to this particular day. That's so very, very unfortunate, but it is very, very true.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to some things here. Reparations. I just want to point out, make sure everybody knows the slave owners were given reparations.
That's a true
for
story.
The slaves being taken from them.
Exactly.
Okay? Make sure we know that. I also want to talk about.
Wait, Jake, don't spoil the fact that not only that, but they were given so much money per slave.
Per slave.
Because they had to let them slaves free. They was given so much money per slave. And not only that, these same people who was given this money, some of those were the same ones that made sure that those freed slaves were quickly arrested for what they call vagrancy laws, which meant if you didn't have a job, you could go to jail And then once you were put back in jail, you were released back to
the slave owners. Yep. I think may have froze there, but you were leased back to those same slave owners that you were just newly freed from. That's how the system worked. But the entire, I'm going to say the entire, but the criminal justice system was found and set up, and these drug laws were specifically set up to target and incarcerate African Americans. Coca-Cola used to actually have cocaine in it.
That's true.
And it was something that the well-to-do Caucasian folk drank all the time. When Black folks started drinking it, then they came up with the first known drug laws to incarcerate Black folk for doing the same thing white folks had been doing.
Well, Jay, also one of the things that they would do during that particular time is they would actually demonize Black folks. It was always this fear: Black men want white women, and so at this particular time, they would actually demonize Black folks, saying, "Oh, they're crazy." That was some of the laws that they also made up concerning marijuana. And that's a thing that's going on today. But the truth is, they used to actually say, "Oh, they get high on marijuana, and then they want to go out and rape white women and stuff like this." So these were the tactics that they were using to get these ridiculous laws passed, some of which are still in place today.
Let's talk about Birth of a Nation, because that was very influential in spreading that mindset that Black men are violent and that all we want to do is rape the white women. And just a historical little note here. Birth of a Nation, it was 1920 something. I'm sorry I don't have the year in front of me, but it was specially screened at the White House.
At the White House.
Or the president, who called it one of the greatest films in American history up to that point, to show you how deep this issue goes. And when people say things like we need to defund the police, it's not just to say let's take away their funding. This has been institutionally set up to specifically target African Americans. That's why they're saying take the money away, let's regroup, restructure it. I say take the whole structure down and start from scratch. And maybe we'll get something that's worth something.
They ain't gonna be able to do that unless they go all the way. When you talk about tearing stuff down, they have to go all the way back to the Constitution, to which they claim to derive a number of these laws from. The same Constitution that said you 3/5 of a man. That's
3. But see, they had to add that because that's oh gosh, I should have looked these terms up before we started. They had to add that because they had when the Constitution was written, it's great as it's written. They just didn't count on us as citizens.
Exactly.
So then they had to come back. Well, I know we said this, but it don't apply to this group because they're only 1/5 human. And they still treat us. You know, how are the prisons and the jail set up? It's not set up for any sort of human life. You know, and any good psychologist will tell you being locked in cages like that is nothing human beings are meant to do.
And that's important because one of the things that Ms. Cooper brought up in her video was she said, well, that's human nature. They think, because the way they treated us, that what they're really afraid of, us treating them the same way. They're saying because it's human nature, but not understanding that it's not human nature for you to treat other human beings less than human. This is something that they've been doing forever. And what they're afraid of is the things that they have been doing are going to come back on them. And so it's the same thing. I just think Ms. Cooper was very clear, and she was saying, well, this would make a difference and stuff. But although I can't say this is what, because starting over in any particular thing, you sometimes understand to get a very strong foundation, you have to raise whatever and make sure the foundation is strong. If the foundation is weak, if the foundation is not right, I don't care what you build on top of that particular structure, it's going to wobble, it's going to fall. So that's the problem. They understand truly they would have to dismantle most of the systems that they have in place now because they all are systemically racist.
And let me bring up the Willie Lynch letter. So just think about that, guys. They wrote a whole letter to say how we should act, and it was going to be in place from years to come. Think about that. Some people got together and thought about how to make a slave and keep them a slave for centuries and centuries to come. That is what they thought of us. I don't know anybody else. I don't know any other cultures that have this mandate. So, to get treated this way. And that's a shame. We were brought over here specifically for this, to remain this. So what they're always doing is trying to make sure that we know that we're not who we think we are. We're not great. Always know that you're always going to be the slave who we brought over here to you to be. This is who you are. You know what? You want to vote? Oh, no. See, you are this slave that we want you to be. Oh, you want to have property? You want to think that you're somebody? Oh, no. See, remember this letter said you're not that. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to cause all this stuff in your community. So then nobody can get out there, get a job, do anything. So then you're all in this whole community trying to get something and you can't. When I was visiting my mom, and there was this gentleman, he was talking to me, and they said that, it was one of the worst counties in Mississippi. He said that they saying that these people here are lazy. And what he was saying is they don't have resources. You have the same people in this community fighting for the same resources. So that letter that was written still lets us know that this is what we are. It's up to us to change that narrative because they're not going to change it for us.
Absolutely. And even the things when we think about those particular issues, when you look at the environments, especially if we talk about a level playing field, many of the folks who grew up in poverty, impoverished, and even as if they try to do things, the schooling is inferior. As we went to the Civil Rights Museum, they showed you the separate classrooms during the same time, the difference between the white classrooms and the black classrooms, the difference between the white resources and the black resources, and all of the time, including to this very day, you can go in a respective zip code and you will know how those resources are being dispensed. Because the simple fact is, how is it that you expect this person to overcome all of the obstacles that's presented for them, first of all, just by the color of your skin? And along with the color of your skin, then we have to look at the fact that you are living in poverty, and then you don't know anything outside of that community. And one of the things that they talk about that gets me all the time, oh, this crime is out of hand. These young guys are doing all these horrendous things. This is something that I don't understand why it's so difficult for them to get. First of all, if you have people in what they believe to be hopeless situations, that they are impoverished beyond some people's imagination. They are impoverished. Don't you know that's exactly where violence stems from? It stems from you being in a position where you believe your situation is hopeless and you are helpless. So as a result, how can they expect for people in these particular conditions to do anything else other than what they're doing based upon the options that they have available? And I'm not saying that we know that there have always been exceptions. We are exceptional people. So we come out of these particular environments and stuff and are still able to do things. You guys knew I grew up in the Robert Taylor homes on the south side of Chicago. I thank God that they tore them down. But in the midst of those particular things, when you're coming up in those, you pretty much they're already giving you, writing your destiny for you. And that's the problem, because they'll tell you, just like they say about most drug dealers, you either end up dead or in jail. Now, what about those people who are just impoverished? They want to do better, but their statistics are actually the same. They're going to end up in prison or dead. Because of the color of your skin, because of your economic, because you were not giving a fair opportunity to do the things that you were put here to do.
And it was set up to be that. I want to go to something that Dr. Mike said, and that's the whole point of me bringing up the Nick Cannon situation. We really need to focus on taking control of our own narrative. Now, is it a challenge? Yes, it's a challenge, because systematically we have been set up to do quite a few things. First, stay divided. Second, remain divided. Third, operate in a divided sense. And it just has trickled down through the generations. You know, at one time, it was house Negroes against the field Negroes. And then that morphed into light skin versus dark skin, educated versus non-educated. It has just trickled down. And so now we have this hybrid that I like to call the Black Republican. And I'm like Paula Patton. I don't trust Black Republicans. It just don't seem natural to me. But again, I can still respect. We don't have to all have the same opinion. We don't have to agree, but it is our God-given right to have an opinion and to have a voice. Yeah. This CRT is simply about erasing our voice.
Absolutely.
How do you do that? Keep our history tucked away so that nobody coming up knows about it. Those who do know about it will eventually die off and we'll be done with it. That's really all the fight against CRT is about.
Right, but even with what you said, Jay, that really makes a difference when you're looking at all these things that stem from this. But I wanted to point out, because I know somebody will bring up the fact that what we know as a fact is during the Lincoln presidency and stuff, that was Republicans. And so they'll talk about, well, it was the Republicans and stuff who did that. And that's a true story. But what you have to understand is that the parties are the parties, which still is something that I don't get. Because if it's a government that's supposed to be for the people, by the people, then I don't understand why we have parties anyway. I mean, other than parties where we could play some good old soul music and, eat some chips and dip. But I mean, right, absolutely. So, and be it with. So, but between Republicans and Democrat Party, it's those people in that party that have systematically changed the scenarios to where it's now being a Republican is actually almost a ridiculous thing to do in some people's opinions for Black folks, because we know what these parties have always looked at and still continue to this day to feel about African Americans. So while you bring up the fact that, yeah, it was that party and stuff, and then you have to keep in mind some of the real stuff. Abraham Lincoln was getting a whole lot of credit that he just quite did not deserve. Yeah, I said it. That's right. Because they talk about him free. He was a politician and he was doing political stuff. He had slaves. He had no problem admitting that he could care less about slaves. Abraham Lincoln even said, I still do not believe that we can live together as a people. He said that I believe they should be somewhere living there and we should be there living our way. So we have to keep.
Hold on. He wanted us to be living somewhere else, but colonized. They still wanted to have control over what we did.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they still do today.
Yeah.
So those are some of the
that's where Frederick Douglass gets such a raw deal, because a lot of African Americans don't care for Frederick Douglass. But had it not been for Frederick Douglass orchestrating and harassing President Lincoln, we would probably, I don't know if we would have been freed anytime soon, because Frederick Douglass orchestrated that campaign to pressure and keep pressuring Lincoln to go ahead and do what he had to do to sign that paperwork to free us.
Absolutely.
What about that video? I'm sorry. What about that video we watched, Mark Lamont Hill, where the man was saying we shouldn't be worried about slavery. We should be worried about the kids making money. And that was one of us that was talking that stuff.
So that coonery that you're speaking of,
right.
I didn't want to inappropriately use the term Uncle Tom, because that gets such a bad rap. Uncle Tom was really a hero. Right. But the coonery and buffoonery that gentleman displayed in the video, yeah, Dr. Mike, go. I have no words. I'm sorry.
Because my saddest thought is the fact that these things are still happening today. When you talk about police shootings, just yesterday, another one, little kid, a 21-year-old, some kid shot in Michigan, killed by a police officer and stuff like this. But I'm saying, and they're saying, oh, well, we'll have to check all this stuff before we decide if we're going to press charges. And even when they do, they're acquitted. Those who do, they're given 5, 10 years and get out in 12 months. So all of these things are clear indications that in 2022, this systematic racism and discrimination is still taking place. And that's the saddest commentary that I can think of.
And the thing that strikes me too about it is that the reason why this is so crucial, the fight against critical race theory, there's so much that we as African Americans do. We don't even understand why we do what we do. But on the flip side, our Caucasian family, it's a lot of stuff they do and don't even realize why they do what they do, because it's hundreds and hundreds
Of
of
years.
years of
Yeah,
programming, and we don't
absolutely.
even realize this stuff is inherently racist. It's like we have no, on both sides. We don't know because it's just
Yeah,
something that we're so used to.
that's
And
true.
I got to point my finger. People gonna love this one, at the African American church, because we took
Come on.
that slave playbook and we still going through that like it's the Bible and
You
trying to
preach.
control and administer our congregations. And that's just it. I said what I said.
And it's the truth. And it's so unfortunate that this is a part of it, because there was one time, that was the place. The church is where we went to have these meetings. The church is where we went when the government wasn't doing what they were supposed to do to provide for the communities and our downtrodden. The church was a place that we knew it was a safe haven that you can go and not worry about it, until such a time where the church became a place where it was okay to bomb a church with little girls sitting in there. When the church, it was okay for you to go up in a church, and us, especially as African Americans and Black folk, welcoming everyone, including white folk, and welcoming them into our church, only to, right after prayer, for the white person to pull out a gun and shoot up everybody in the church. And then for church to become something outside of what it was intended to be, to where it says it's all about the Benjamins, baby. So, that's something where, and then when those who are suffering and need it most, those are the ones that are being turned away. And this is something that I believe that is absolutely something that we did get from those folks who were trying to hold us down. And so these are the things that we are, because one of the things that Miss Cooper said was, they know. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Oh, they know what they did. They know what was done. And just like we can sit here and say, oh, well, yeah, I had nothing to do with slavery. I wasn't around and stuff. But you still benefit from slavery until you come to that acknowledgement that we receive the apology. And I just can't help but to believe that it won't be a very sincere one whenever it comes. And reparations are absolutely crucial. And one of the things that they made up, that I heard someone say about that, well, if they give Black people reparations, everybody gonna have a Cadillac. Now, my simple answer
Barbershop.
to
That was the movie Barbershop.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So if that is what they decide to do, then so be it. Maybe that's their mule. I think they should get their 40 acres too. So, but I bring that up simply because no one ever said anything about, oh, well, the Japanese, they're all gonna buy sushi. The Chinese, with their reparations, they all gonna buy rice, which actually rice actually came from Africa. But
Right.
they didn't say anything about the Ukrainians, that they came up with billions of dollars to help support and house these particular people. They didn't say anything about the Afghanistan, when they're saying that they don't have enough money for the impoverished communities, but when they placed these people in housing and gave them billions of dollars from U.S. tax dollars, and Black folk are still suffering every single day.
Wait, and then they did all of that, but they sent them Haitians right back.
Sure did.
With a whip on a horse, just like from the plantation.
Yes.
Come on.
And that was what, 2020?
2021.
2021?
Last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so these are some things that I say that I cannot understand how any of us could sit by idle and not speak about these particular issues. And even back in the day, a lot of folks, they were concerned about, well, you're working for the white folks, so you had to be careful because you were going to lose your job. Of course, even with my granddad, they know the story. They sat there, shot up, bummed up his house because he just wanted to register to vote. So these things were systematically put in place, and unfortunately, them and their effects are still here today. That's a sad commentary.
What I am going to say, though, that this has raised awareness to a lot of people, because a lot of white people had no idea what their grandparents did, because now they feel like they've been lied to. Like you told me that Columbus discovered America. What? And so now they're getting all these books and they're doing all their research. They like, what? So you hate these people just now. Everybody's not going to get it, but they're just saying, right, you hate these people just because of this. And then it also makes a way for us to have dialogue within our own community, because some of us still don't know our history.
Absolutely. And that's a crucial point. Yeah. That's the truth too. And those are always been the two things that you have to be careful, because you can't help everyone. Some folks need help and know they need help. Some folks need help and don't know they need help.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes from both sides of the spectrum.
From both sides. Yep. Yeah. I also wanted to mention, I'm still on the fence about the whole Ukraine situation, because I can't get over the fact that they tried to round up people of color, specifically the Africans, but it wasn't just the Africans, and tell them, you can't leave. Yes. We're going to force you to stay here and fight for the cause. And this black medical student was like, I'm not even from here. What are you talking about?
And that's my thing. So why I'm not on the fence, because here it is that
froze a bit. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, while he's
clearly, I mean, I didn't
say it again, Dr. Mike. You froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, the reason I'm not on the fence is because while I wasn't aware of them trying to make them fight, I was aware of the fact that they were not allowing them to leave when they wanted to leave, because they were giving preference to those white people. And you put it any other way you want, but that's what it was. Based upon your color of the skin, they was like, get back, Jack. And that I had a sincere problem with. But they said, oh, listen. And somebody had the nerve to say, when they were asking for help with them, and they said, well, this is not an African nation, or this is not this is Europeans. And all that simply translated in my simple mind is that these ain't black folks. These are white folks, and we need your help. That's what I have a problem with. So I'm
glad you said European, because, the Europeans tried to make racism an American issue, that's not anybody else but America. And it's like, have you forgotten how America got to be America, where it came from? And so there's a black young lady from England. And when this airs, I'll have the link to post it. She did a video, it's on YouTube, where she went through all the major streets in Great Britain who were named after infamous slave owners. She traced it all the way back and gave the history. And Europeans really do try to shuck and jive and get away from the part they have played in history in terms of, but racism isn't just America. Go to Africa now. Go to Africa right now. Absolutely. And it's a new thing. The Chinese are the white folk now, because they're trying to completely take over Africa.
That's true.
They want to deny the African presence in their own culture.
That is true. That is true with so many of the countries around the world, because I think that's how you know how bad this has been embedded into society, period. Simply because any place you go through on a structure of human beings, those with melanin, those of African descent, black people are always at the bottom of the list. How do you go to Finland? You can go to Germany. You can go to any of these places that I guarantee you, black folks are always the one at the end of the totem pole. And that's been embedded since they started doing this stuff that they began when they were so-called discovering stuff.
And they even tried to bring up this issue when they just confirmed Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown. And there was a part in there where Ted Cruz was talking about this book, Anti-Racist Baby, you know what? Would you tell your kids this, or would you read this to them? And it was another book, and his name is Imbram. Can't think of his name in of the book. So
Yeah.
as Ted Cruz was doing all that talking about that, African Americans went online and made that man book a New York Times bestseller because it was teaching Black people about
Within
being
hours.
racist. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was one of those people. As soon as I was like, oh, let me get on here and buy this book.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's sold out
But,
now. You know.
Yeah.
right. And that's the thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I always simply want you to be aware of these things that are taking place right now in front of our very eyes and our very noses.
Wait, Dr. Mike, don't wrap up.
We only got a few more minutes. We only got a couple more minutes. So I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to say something in their closing, because we only got a couple of minutes before we got to close this thing. So I wanted to give that opportunity, but I want to make sure people understand how important CRT is for us not to allow places like Mississippi to create these laws saying, oh, it can't be taught, never be taught in our particular classes. What they're clearly saying is that we don't want real history taught, because Black history is inextricably tied to American history, period. All right, so each of you, let's take a couple of minutes, wrap up. Let's say your closing thoughts so we can get ready to get on out of here.
All right, Jay, okay. So for me, with the CRT thing, I think that, as Jay and Dr. Wilkins also stated about, we need to change the narrative because they're not going to do it. If there's some kind of way where we need to get out and get the word out there and teaching people, and we already do that now. We already speak with kids and do different things and try to mold their minds, not just with this, but just with life in general. So I think that we have to change the narrative because they're never going to help us. They never have. You might get a few that's going to say, you know what? We believe in you and let's move forward. But for the most part, we have to change this thing because they are here to still drag us down. And that Willie Lynch law still, letter still exists.
Still exists today, yep.
Yeah.
And we have to be what I call a little gangster and taking control of our narrative. And that was the whole point Dave Chappelle was trying to make. The LGBTQ plus community, they don't care how nice they say it, they shut you down and take control of their narrative. Our Jewish family, Whoopi Goldberg gave an opinion. It was not malicious. They shut it down and she was immediately suspended. We as African American people have to have that type of control and demand when it comes to our own narrative. There's no other way. They clearly are not going to give it to us. They're trying to erase and completely change the narrative across the board. So we got to come together and change and take control of our narrative. I just want to say this in closing. I was going to mention the whole Byron Allen situation with entertainment and cable TV. We'll say that for another time. I just want to end with this history. So it is history. This is well documented. They try to hide this, that Caucasians were very primitive, violent people. They didn't even know how to take good hygiene. It was killing them, their poor hygiene. It was the Africans who were able to teach them, or tried, should I say, to teach them so that they could even live beyond a certain span as far as their hygiene is concerned. And what happened? Our good Europeans throughout history, they would come over to Africa and Kemet. If you don't know what I'm speaking of when I say Kemet, look it up.
Men Black.
And they would get together, and the Africans were so intelligent. They had the thinkers. They were so creative, so progressive. And they would come every year to learn and to glean everything they could. Then what happened? They were taking it back, but they were taking it back wrong. They couldn't quite get it together. So what did they do? They came and conquered good old Kemet. And what we know as Greek mythology really started out as African mythology, but who knows that? So I'm saying that throughout history, because we were sun-kissed, we were empowered. There's something within the cells. Look it up. It's scientific. The average Caucasian person has this number of about 6. The average African American has about a 30, and that same number is something within our cells that just kind of makes us superior. And I'm not saying white supremacy, Black supremacy. I'm just giving you science. There's something about our people. How do you think we were able to make it through slavery and they not only used our hard work in the cotton fields, they took our ideas, our invention, our
Absolutely.
technology, our cooking, everything. What culture is there without Black folk? There
Exactly.
is none. And what I'm saying is to try to erase the history and the roots, we cannot allow it. There's just too much. And it'd be different if it was a past tense issue. This is a present issue right now. So you can't possibly erase the past because, first of all, nobody's apologized, nobody's atoned, and you're still doing what you've always done.
Absolutely. It's totally embedded. And we just thank you so much. They've already said what I have to say. So all I want to do is encourage you all to understand that it's very important, more now than ever before in our lives, for us to say what we mean and mean what we say. So we as a people have to learn to speak for ourselves, because if you let other folks tell your history, they're going to try to shut it down and never allow you to tell the true history of African Americans and our Black folks. So once again, we just want to say thank you all so much for tuning in to Speak for Yourself. Speak for Yourself podcast. This is where we encourage you to say what you mean what you say. Remember, you can call us, text 708-785-7371, or reach us on our website, www.spatheater.org. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, with Tammy Dozier and Jake Collins. Oh, stay tuned, baby, because we got a lot more coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Peace.